Skill Council. Our next session is a panel discussion on electrification of fleets and understanding the charging infrastructure for e-vehicles in India. It is my pleasure to introduce you to the moderator, Mr. Shatanik Goswami, Director at Deloitte, followed by our panelists, Mr. Animesh Sahai, Head of Customers, India and South Asia, Kia Technologies, Ms. Sakshi Vij, Executive Director, Cars on Rent, and founder of Miles Automotive Technologies, Ms. Dipali Dev, COO at Eco Rent a Car, and Mr. Ashwin More, Growth Lead at Meru Mobility Tech. A very warm welcome to you all. Over to you, Mr. Goswami.
Thank you, Javisha. Welcome, everybody. It's great to have you all on this very pertinent topic for today, which is to do with how do you roll out EVs and look at the whole charging infrastructure. We have a very power-packed panel today. We'll have about 45 minutes. Any questions, if you have, please post it in the Q&A window, and we'll be able to take it towards the end. So let me begin by summarizing. We've done some recent work studying this sector within India, and we started with some consumer research, and about 56% of the consumers have actually mentioned lower emissions as their primary motive for looking at an EV, and about 22% have looked at lower operations cost. So obviously, we see that from a customer perception perspective, EVs are very important, from a sustainability point of view. We've also found out that typically the premium that customers are willing to pay for EV over the regular ICE vehicles is typically less than 1 lakh rupee. And I think the cost of EV, apart from the charging rollout, has been sort of a deterrent for many of our consumers. Again, from a rollout perspective, globally as well, what we are seeing, it's a chicken and an egg problem, right? You don't have enough charging stations because you don't have enough cars, and you don't have enough cars, well, because there are not enough charging stations. And the whole business case for charging stations is not very, green at the moment, black at the moment, because there are not enough cars to really go around that. So how do we tackle some of these issues? It's something that, I would pick the expert brains present here today. So let me start the discussion today with you, Sakshi, and I will sort of ask you to weigh in on this whole aspect of how do this EV ecosystem work together, both the OEMs as well as players like you, to enable a lower total cost of operations, have a more flexible, affordable ownership on the cars. Sakshi?
Thank you, Shatanik. I think you're very right. One of the things that is extremely important as far as an EV market to develop anywhere is the cost of ownership for the customer, the end user. At the same time, it is extremely important that the end user is able to get the right kind of comfort as far as usage is concerned, which comes through what is the kind of battery, what is the kind of charging infrastructure, etc., which is available. In keeping the discussion limit first on the cost of ownership, there are two parts to it. Like you mentioned, the first is what can the OEMs do? What can the manufacturers do? On the manufacturer side, one of the things that's becoming extremely relevant is what can they do in terms of the range of vehicles that they provide. By range, I don't mean the variety, but I mean the actual driving range of the vehicles that is provided. The other is the kind of comfort that they can provide as far as the batteries is concerned, the life of the batteries is concerned. In doing all of this, though, the actual cost of ownership of an EV goes up significantly basis the current level of technologies that are available for batteries. Because while, and in the case of an EV, the overall maintenance cost of a car is much lower, the initial cost of owning an EV is much higher. What we've also seen is that in a large number of cases, the customers that are ready to purchase a certain size of car are, like you mentioned, are probably willing to give a premium of up to 1 lakh of rupees. Where players like us, especially through our subscription and car sharing services come in, which is what we provide under Miles, is that we partner with OEMs for them to be able to offer a more flexible and affordable way of presenting any model of vehicles really to the customer. What that does is that if a customer, instead of saying that here this is a sedan EV available to you for 15 lakhs, which a similar sized vehicle would be available for 10 lakhs, which is actually the case today. But you don't have to pay me the 15 lakhs. You actually have to pay me only 50 or 25,000 a month. And you have to pay me this for the next 3 years. The customer is more comfortable taking that call instead of saying, I have to pay for the entire duration. I have to, make an investment of 15 lakhs. What that further reduces is this uncertainty in the mind related to what will be the life of the battery, whether I will get a replacement on the battery or not, whether the OEM will be able to handle the entire maintenance on all the uncertain or unforeseen sort of problems that come with an electric vehicle. Because we must remember that not everyone's experienced an EV. The OEMs come with a lot of confidence about the EV, but the market today is not experienced it as yet. Even though we're getting a lot of models now, and that's an encouraging sign. In order to penetrate the market, OEMs are today partnering and presenting solutions like subscription to their customers, where they don't have to make a down payment on the vehicle. They don't have to make a commitment on the duration for which they want to own the vehicle. And therefore, they don't have to make a commitment on the investment that they make on the vehicle. This also means that the customer, while getting an experience of ownership and really driving the car as their own, is still able to follow a more carefree scenario, a more hassle-free, method of ownership, where the OEM along with partners like us, which is Miles, takes care of a large part of the user journey. And that becomes extremely interesting from the customer. We have seen examples of corporate organizations. We've seen examples of individual car owners who, at the time of purchase, which is the moment of truth, when they're offered the various models of purchase which are available in the market today, which could be, an outright purchase, taking a loan, etc., and subscription. In the case of an EV, the subscription model really becomes a lot more palatable to them. And they're really able to take that call far quicker. What this is also doing is that from an OEM perspective, they have a lot of control on the data of usage. Now, even though as far as an OEM is concerned, if this is a electric vehicle, they get a substantial amount of data on the vehicle in any case. However, in terms of actual customer usage, in terms of real behavioral data, in terms of everyday interaction with the customer, that's something that players like us collect from the customer. And that helps the OEM to also improve the experience better. We're also then, because we are getting into arrangements more closely and we're able to provide avenues to the customers on a more comprehensive, automated fashion, they can really handle their entire ownership cycle through their mobile phone. They don't need to worry about who's the dealership, where am I going to go, all of those things. And I think those are some of the things that I think significantly reduce the anxiety around the cost of ownership for the customer. And also over time, it helps the OEMs to judge data around the efficiencies of their batteries, the life of the vehicle itself, the kind of maintenance costs that the car can come up with, etc., etc.
No, thank you, Sakshi. That was very illuminating. So you've obviously covered in terms of battery is a big issue, and the way I understand it, while most of, for example, advanced markets like US and all Typically, batteries are guaranteed for a much longer duration of time. In India, in the absence of regulation, typically, the OEMs guarantee only about 3 years or 4 years. You mentioned the cost, the whole data platform as essentially becoming a very important ingredient, which actually helps put all of this together. And that's point I will actually subsequently pick up with you, Animesh. But I just want to sort of first get the whole consumer thing done. So Deepali, I'll just come to you. We've looked at, for example, around the cost of ownership and batteries as two of the components. But if I look at, from a customer perception experience perspective, given that you're handling these customers every day, what are the factors beyond the vehicle that will actually help the uptake of EVs for Indian consumers?
Right, Mr. Goswami. Thank you so much for the question. Well, I think that it is a very lethal combination what we put on the road, which is the car and the chauffeur who's going to drive it. So two things are constant in this. One, the car will be needed, and the second one is the chauffeur. Since specifically now post-COVID, cost is the king. So the PEB, which is the perceived economic benefit, that is something which is going to play a lot of role. Though Sakshi has covered it, but I just want to kind of conclude it with one sentence of mine that, the initial price band of buying a EV may be higher, but the cost of running and maintenance is relatively low. And this is in comparison to the current vehicles that we have. As you have asked me to talk about the points which are beyond this, the first thing is on which all the humans usually wait, hope that a better model will come up. So this is a big fear, and there are studies which I have read which show that consumers tend to be very of the new technology, which informs their decision to put off buying EV at this point in time, and they want to see that whether the new one is coming or not, and how the new one is going to be. Now the problem is that with technology there will be a new model, and that new model will always be advanced version of it. The issue is primarily in the minds of the consumer to think that right now, if they are trying to pay a higher tech automobile cost, coupled with their demands and requirements, with the limited constraint system which we have, will it be able, or should they wait and read the other reviews and then buy? So people are waiting, to a very large extent, and waiting to see what is the next that is going to come up. The second thing is the word change, the social need. There is a change need. So a lot of people are seriously very concerned about the, conditions of our planet. And there are articles which are indicating that we are almost at the brink of a total collapse. Obviously, people want to be a part of that solution, and they don't want to be a part of the problem. And hence, they also want to be a part of this EV generation which is coming up. While usually people think about themselves, their comfort, their pockets, and their safety, security, but there is a social change, and people are now kind of ready to embrace that new technology. However, they still have this in mind. That is it a fascination, or is it just a fantasy that zero carbon is going to be there, or is it still something that zero carbon is a myth and it is never going to be zero? Because if you put together the recharging etc of all the cars which we are going to put in, is it going to take that entire thing away of carbon, or is it still going to be there? So these are cultural contradiction which we have to somewhere put an end in our minds. If you try and understand that, as a human being, we always want that change, but we don't want the things around us to change. Now it is a time when the Indian consumer needs to think about our daily habits, practices, and also our purchase habits. So that is, another point which people need to think about, and they are still thinking, and that is one of the reasons. The third point which I would like to definitely bring here is our readiness culturally, because new mobility and new skills. So while Sakshi was talking about, how dealership, etc., and automakers might like to shape up, but over 10 to 5, next 5 to 10 years, the skill set which is going to be, needed at those automakers and suppliers is going to be very different. She did speak about data because data is going to play a very, very vital role. So this traditional automaker system to supplier is going to change dramatically, and several factors will kind of, influence the change. There will be a requirement of top talent in all these automakers and suppliers, because now they will need people who are more equipped with data, with the dynamics and the different facets of analytics. And hence, these kind of companies would require, a cultural transformation and not just a skill transformation. They would require managers to be more approachable, speedy hiring, onboarding, agile working, fast decision processes, etc., etc. So not just the skill transformation it is going to happen, it is going to be a lot of cultural transformation beyond what Sakshi has already spoken about, the car and the infrastructure. A little bit of self-image will also play a role. We were talking about it, that there's a notion which is, in the countries other than India, which has been called as eco-friendly people will opt for electric vehicle. So what I mean when I say this, that people are thinking about this self-image also. So if you see, it is like, first who will begin, and once somebody will begin, then a lot of people will start following, also considering that let me also do my own contribution towards the towards the wellness of this planet. However, still coming back, it is the comfort, the safety, security of the travel which is required. I am a part of an organization which cuts across all segments. We move people, anybody who's movable, we move them. So all kind of vehicles, all kind of segments. One thing is constant. People will need their safety, security. They will need post-COVID, a lot of care. So if electric vehicles can give that sense of security going forward also, then it is a win-win situation. However, yes, India is in shallow waters, and we really need to do a lot of work around this, not only on the cars and the infra, but also on the aspects which I have just tried hinting here.
No, thank you, Deepali. It's very, very interesting. We've always looked at this as an engineering and a financial challenge. But you're saying the whole perception management and the education of the customers, and obviously customer is one aspect, but in a mixed fleet kind of a scenario, how do you handle, for example, maintenance of EV vehicle, which will have a different, set of maintenance needs with ICE. All that has to be basically put in place, you're saying, essentially before we will be able to actually fully move towards, accelerate the journey of BEV adoption. You've also mentioned obviously a lot of analytics, and also Animesh, when I'll come to you, I'll add that also. But before that, I want to also take the non-consumer aspect of the business. And Ashwin would come to you. In terms of the, if I look at the logistics, the last mile delivery, what are EVs viable there, given the fact that obviously these could be circulating in areas which are away typically from these big centers where you've got ample parking and all that. Often in basically remote areas and everywhere, so one is the viability, and I also want you to talk in terms of what are some of the innovations that will fuel the adoption of EV, and what kind of challenges and support you need from, for example, the OEMs, but also regulators. If you could highlight some of that.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Goswami. Yeah, and hello to everyone over here. It's taking a note from Deepali's pointers, right? Yes, a cultural shift, which that particular pointer struck me like anything, right? But when we talk about a non-consumer aspect of it, or on a logistic purview, viability, cost saving is something which worked around. Now, last year typically was very difficult for the entire sectors across, but it typically was in a pretty bad shape for sectors like mobility, hospitality, and travel, and so on and so forth. So these sectors had to innovate in a very different manner to sustain and work around. So at Meru, typically along with Mahindra, we try to innovate in a model wherein our driver partners were suffering. There was zero travel across, and we thought let's work around our way in a totally different manner. So the problem statement. I'll take you through a case study which we followed last year and projects which we did last year, right? It might sound interesting to you in terms of what kind of innovations we did. So the initial level of problem which was identified, that no one was traveling because of lockdown. There was zero travel across. Now the immediate problem which was facing us directly on our face was driver partners were without any revenue. That had to be fixed. Now, what we observed outside the industry, now because of the lockdown, the digital usage or ordering through the digital platform through retailers was increasing. It was on a surge like anything. Because of this, there was a bottleneck in the existing last mile delivery system. Now, because of this humongous surge in the demand, the logistic or the last mile delivery was suffering like anything. Just to give you a number wise context to this, now Big Basket, which did a delivery as in 1.3, they used to do around 1.3 to 1.4 lakh deliveries per day. It was in year 1920. But during the first phase of this pandemic, when this particular hit us, they were doing a delivery of close to around 4 to 4.5 lakhs per day. Now, just understand that within this particular span, our existing logistics setup was hit like anything, and it needed an immediate fix. And this we identified. But along with that, there was one more problem: the problem of viability. Now, the industry expert always says that the last mile delivery is the most costliest of the entire supply chain as a cost. Uh, Typically, it adds to a cost of around 45% to the entire supply chain cost. Now, a immediate problem of supply has to be fixed, but along with the economical and viable option. So EV was something which came to us as a solution, wherein we could use our EV passenger fleet and could be used for the last mile delivery for the essential goods. Now, just to give you a comparative analysis on this, a fossil fuel per kilometer cost will cost you around rupees 4 to 4.5 rupees per kilometer. Compared to if we use a EV vehicle, it would hover around 1.5 to around 2 rupees per kilometer. So yes, a direct cost saving on that particular aspect. And this is how we got the entry at the first place. To set a context, now this was the first time passenger fleet, EV passenger fleet was used for delivery of essential goods. There were multitude of customers which worked with us, retailers which worked with us, but specifically I would like to highlight that Flipkart was one of them, the first one to partner with us to innovate on this particular front. And when we partnered, we had the change in driver mindset, earning revenue kind of thing. And this model took off so beautifully that we had around 1 lakh deliveries in the initial few weeks of our association. And till date, we still are continuing with models in the areas where there is a lot of restriction. So yes, when I talk about this, it is viable like anything, but as the pointers are there, there are a lot of regulatory issues. There are a lot of things which and efforts which have to be put in to make it uh, uh, flexible, to make it more applicable in the real world as a scenario. Because when I talk about case study, it works real good in a very difficult and unique situations. But when we talk about in a normal day scenario, lot of regulatory aspect have to be eased around by the government. Secondly, a immediate shift of mindset is needed from the consumer end, and most importantly the OEM end. Now why do I say OEMs? Because they should perceive this as a market which could develop in the coming future, right? Now just to quote an example and to be more sensible to this particular context, there is a company called as Cano, right? So they have this multi-purpose delivery vehicles. So these vehicles are those vehicles which could work as a taxi or a commercial vehicle, passenger fleet vehicle. Along with that, during their idle hours, these cars can be used as a delivery vehicles. So this kind of perspective, this kind of outlook towards this market, which could grow around, could help the mobility as a sector, wherein driver partners, the bottom of the pyramid could be easily making a new stream of revenue generation. OEMs would have their own market, and ultimately the entire last mile delivery and supply chain as a cost could be arrested, right? So we could see a potential market growing in near future. So this is what in a nutshell I would try to sum it up. Yeah.
No, thank you, Ashwin. And in fact, we did a survey last year, and basically plotting the price of petrol versus the willingness to shift to EV. It was kind of interesting at about 114 rupees a liter, and this was done when the price ranged in cities, between, let's say, around 80 rupees a liter. At about 114 was when 48% of the consumers said they would prefer shifting to EVs. And if, for example, the price actually reaches at about 120 and all, more than half of the consumers would actually seriously look at EV as their next sort of vehicle. So that is obviously one of the things, which could potentially work in our favor, given the way the prices have been. But I think all of you have looked at data essentially and analytics as being of critical sort of importance, at least when it comes to fleet planning and the whole logistics piece. So I wanted to come to you, Animesh. Now, obviously, in any logistics kind of a scenario, a fleet pattern analysis would actually help the OEM, look at both the actual driving patterns, sufficiency of range requirements, and basically, in order to do all that, you will need connected fleets. And once you have connected fleets, the sheer wealth of data that you could generate. So wanted to pick your brains in terms of, first of all, what are these challenges? And obviously from a fleet operator's perspective, an OEM platform itself might not suffice, because, you might have a mix of these various vehicles. So, what are the technology challenges, and how can, data orchestrator like yours could possibly, help the logistics sector actually get those insights and do the fleet optimization?
Okay, thanks, Shatanik. There are your question has got, I would say, multiple answers, and what I would try to do is I will try to divide this into multiple buckets, so that I do justice to each part. A couple of things, one, Sakshi mentioned about the data generated, and I will come to that part a bit later. And this will also answer the tech part that I'm talking about. Dipali also mentioned about the feeling of security into the EV, which is a very, very critical factor. And Ashwin also mentioned about lowering of OPEX, which was the quite prominent part that Ashwin mentioned. So let me take the first part, which is the feeling of security. Now, when you talk about a feeling of security in any EV, is where the term range anxiety comes into picture. Now, today, buying of an EV is one part of it, but for a consumer or a driver to sit in that car and be confident that he will not get stranded anywhere while he drives is the most critical part. And that's where the security aspect that Dipali mentioned, and I think that was what she was hinting at, it becomes very critical. Without that, I think the EV takeoff is going to be still very, very far fetched unless until we solve that problem. So if you look at from a tech perspective, and that's where the technology comes in, because today EV, when you look at EV, there is a finite range, 150 kilometers or 200 kilometers, the max that I have heard or read in the is what a car or a vehicle would support. So it is very important that when a driver sits on his car and he inputs the destination that he's going to go, the vehicle should be able to give him exactly where he will reach, how he will reach. And for that, there are multitude of technology that works behind. Like, it's not a simple range calculation wherein, okay, he has to travel for 120 kilometers. I have a range in the battery for 120, so he will reach. No, it doesn't happen that way, because the factor for the range calculation would depend upon the destination, would depend upon the the altitude, the height and ups and downs and the potholes, and whether it's raining or not, and whether the wiper is running or not, whether he's working on the AC or not, whether there is a light, it's at night. Okay, so there are multiple of these factors which go into the calculation. Once that calculation has been done and it says that, okay, what looks like 120 kilometers is actually just 80 kilometers. What would you do? Then it's also, again, the work of the technology to have the data in terms of the charging stations all across. And not only just simply charging stations, because unfortunately what is happening is on the charging stations also, there are multiple types of charging stations. Yeah. It is a slow charging, fast charging, or super fast charging, whether the charging station is available or not available. Okay, whether it is free at that time, it is open at that time, what is the tariff, do I need to book the slots? And secondly, if you're talking about a car or a scooter or a truck or a bus, these three have got three different characteristics, even in terms of whether he will be able to route to that particular charging stations and all that. So the technology, or what we call as a smart algorithm-based routing, would be able to actually take away all these problems of a rider, and he'll be confident that, yes, I can reach my destination, maybe by rerouting and going to a charging station first, but he will be able to reach that. This is one aspect. Second, you talked about the data. Now, when you talk about an EV, it's like a computer, right? It's generating humongous amount of data. And these data to the tune of maybe few seconds, it is sending out data. Now, these data have got a lot of applications. These data could be used in multitude. Like, for example, when we talk about the data monetization is another big stuff that these guys can use it, and this can go into multiple use cases across BFSIs, across insurance, across improving of products, across predicting of traffic, a lot of stuff. That's where the data play. And the third aspect where you talked about, which would be more applicable for, I would say, the heavy vehicle, is what you call about telematics, where you got the managed asset management is what we call about. Now, asset management, again, it's something that people are talking about. A lot of people have got into it, but this is where you are able to do what we call as a pre-trip analysis, post-trip analysis, doing turn by turn, knowing exactly where your driver is, knowing exactly where your equipment is, and all this is being done by a centralized platform, which manages this like an asset right from start till the end, and does a both pre-analysis as well as post-analysis. So this is where the technology would come in terms of supporting the EV industries, and both in all the three segments of a two-wheeler, electric two-wheeler, or electric four-wheeler, or maybe the heavy trucks and all that.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Anmesh. So in fact, when we did our survey, we figured out that within India, actually the sweet spot for range expectations was 320 kilometers on a charge, or on a fully charged battery. So if you, I think currently our EVs mostly are slightly less than that, but at about 320 kilometers range, more than 70% of the consumers in India, actually more than almost 80% of the consumer would be satisfied. So it's not a dramatic sort of a range that we are necessarily looking at. And I think outside of the metros, actually, people don't need to drive that much. Logistics sector is obviously a sort of different. One of the interesting innovations that I have seen happening in some countries is actually using an app-based, so people with chargers at home can actually allow any charge to come in, any car to come and charge, which I think is once you link up all of these platforms together, could actually become a game changer. Because if I look at tier 2 towns and all, mostly high rises concept is not there, and outside of Delhi and Bombay, where parking is a nightmare, generally people do have dedicated spots, and therefore charging could be relatively simple. I had one more sort of question to you, Animesh. If you look at today, car vehicles are all essentially on this, software operating system, if I may call it. And as you mentioned, electric vehicles are today a car has probably more software than most ERP products. So, do you see a shift from OEM into sort of integrating these data platforms as a part of the core architecture of the car itself, or we are still somewhat far away from it?
No, I don't think so. We are far away. I'll just give you one statistics. The code that is written in a Mercedes car is more than what is there in a Boeing plane. So and this is a well-known statistic. So it's a fact today. If we have to grow, the software is going to be at the core or at the heart of any vehicle. I will not use the word just electric vehicle. Electric vehicle, definitely that goes by default. Electric vehicle has to have it. But even without that today, every car which is there on the road, every two-wheeler which is there on the road, every bus which is there on the road has a mini computer into it. And it's very important for them to adopt a data strategy for all the car manufacturers.
No, thank you for that, Animesh. So I'll open the panel to any questions. If you have, do feel free to put in. But just to sort of, since we are in the last 5 minutes of this, today we obviously didn't get so much of a chance to discuss some of the topic, but obviously from a policy perspective, and I think Sakshi, you in a way referred to it as well. A lot more needs to be done. Ashwin, you also mentioned, I think. So, for example, today the whole FAME program, while it is helping, the incentive alignment between, let's say, the transport operators, state transport operators, and the mobility providers are not aligned. The rates of subsidies are different. The penalty clauses are completely different. Even if we look at, for example, the whole role of DISCOM in terms of setting up the charging infrastructure, it's not really very well defined. And obviously, if OEMs, sort of set up their charging infrastructure, then obviously the interoperability and all those concerns remain. Obviously, we now have adapters, which can help you sort of connect to other car systems. But all of that is basically adding up to a cost already on this charging infrastructure, which is struggling for the business case, given the lack of sort of EV cars on the road. So those are some of the things that I think as a policy needs to be sort of optimized to give the right regulatory support for EV adoption in India. Any thoughts from any of the panels on any regulatory requirements that you feel is absolutely must to sort of foster this? Sakshi, you.
Sure, Shatanik, I think on the whole point on the regulatory aspects that have really built in, we must remember how, and some of the most advanced markets of electric vehicle adoption are Europe, are China, are a lot of actually parts of Canada. These are the places that have really adopted electric vehicles, and this has happened due to increased comfort that is being provided with respect to charging, also with respect to vehicle options that are available. Yeah. A lot of the charging, of course, is a matter of the public works and the municipal departments of the cities where electric vehicle adoption is very high. Having said that, we have to be aware of the uniqueness of the country that we live in. where there may not be in the densely populated areas as much adoption of charging facilities that can be created. But then again, I think the ideas of how can the commercial, residential, and shopping complexes, etc., be adopted as smart spaces to create charging infrastructures. How can common charging infrastructures be provided? There are a lot of companies that are coming in now, actually, which are providing charging infrastructures, and they are able to provide it on a much larger scale. But again, operability, interoperability, space availability, all of that is something that needs to grow. Another interesting phenomena that I'm seeing, and I think it should be encouraged in the country today, is this entire idea of how vehicles can actually be built for the exact use case for which they need to be used. A classic example is this company called Arrival out of the UK. And I'm sure we're aware, some of us are aware of how it has changed the game of how electric vehicles are thought about by just having a basic platform ready, and then they create vehicles for whatever use cases. There are companies like that I'm familiar with that are developing in India and are trying to build products like that. They're working with the likes of Amazon. They're working with the likes of, some of the other logistics providers. We are working with them to try and create cars that are, specific to our kind of use cases. And I think that'll help in a big way as well to remove range anxieties, to enable, a much more user-friendly product really to be available. So yes.
Okay, thank you, Sakshi, for that. One question that has been posted: what has been the trend of electric car rentals before and after COVID-19? Deepali, you want to take a stab at it?
I wanted to actually add to what Sakshi was saying.
Okay.
On the previous one. So when it's about more policies, then as instead of targeting only the metro cities which are quite congested in all the meanings, as a practice and an initiative, government may like to first spread, the culture of EV, and the viability will also come very faster at those areas. The tier 2 cities, which are not much congested, if I may use the word. So that is what I wanted to add here. That as a policy matter, that can also be taken up. That they should kind of make a mandate and try and once the availability of the cars, etc., is there, and which is now enough in terms of, because the running is lesser in those cities, the diameters of the cities are less, the traffic conditions are much better. So that is something which I wanted to add to.
Sure. Thanks.
Satanik,
yes.
Just to answer that question of yours, right? One of the audiences posted on that, right? So on the car rental front, electric rental front, pre-COVID and post-COVID, right? So things are easing around, but just to set a context over here, we need to understand this kind of pandemic is similar to what happened in 9/11, right? So during that particular time, the aircraft bookings or airline booking or travel, it drastically came down, and it took almost 5 years to build the confidence back and have the same pre 9/11 numbers. Now here, this post-COVID kind of world would be similarly based on building the confidence. Yes, we are seeing easing of restriction. We are seeing confidence going back. But this pandemic hit us when we were just trying to step up this game of electric ground transportation, right, to a next level. So yes, slowly but surely, with confidence building, this would take up and would happen.
No, absolutely, well said, Roshan. So obviously, I mean, to whoever posted this, travel as such is significantly down. So maybe the numbers will not necessarily justify the trend. But EV, is something that has been introduced. I actually pick up a EV at my airport drop in Delhi. They're easily available, so it's already happening. There was one more question. I'll just mention, what factors are independently driving the purchasing decisions for EVs, and I think the panel already earlier answered it. It's about typically range anxiety, lower emissions, safety, availability of battery technology. These are the things that consumers are evaluating before they pick up this, before they decide to buy an EV topic. I think the final point from my side was that obviously the one other regulatory aspect would be to look at a differential charging sort of price point, because if the charging is the same and all the vehicles are hitting the charging stations at the same time, actually it is difficult to make money in the charging infrastructure, and we need to address that if the whole market has to take up. So just to summarize the discussion, today, thank you so much, panel. We discuss in terms of what are the factors that are shaping the consumer's view towards EV, what are their pains, what are the things that they want. They want more support, they want large number of models, not that high a premium. There is a lot of play, a lot of optimizations possible by the collection and usage and analytics of the data that we have. There is a significant amount of regulatory and ecosystem support that is needed before EV will completely take off. But from whatever we are seeing, and the presence of this panel itself is telling us that EV adoption is increasing. So with that, I'll invite Jevisha for the vote of thanks and closing. Jevisha.
That was indeed an interesting discussion. Thank you, dear panelists, for taking time out to join us today. We would like to thank our title partner, HERE Technologies, powered by partner Pando, brought to you by partner Grey Orange, and supported by partner Logistics Skill Council. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in 10 minutes with our next session. Stay tuned.
Thank you so much.